I walked through a cemetery past the above ground stone pillows, and I noticed the dates that didn't go too long, 1983 to 1987. And I cursed God for bringing something down only to take it away so quickly, like a yo-yo, you know. So
Terrible.
there's
Terrible.
something about, yeah, when you see those
It's,
little
dude,
numbers, man, and
it's the worst.
they're like
I don't.
shoebox coffins, man.
I know. When I actually helped dig a
Yeah,
grave recently
I don't like them.
I dug a grave recently for an older gentleman, and that grave was going near a baby's grave. I did
Oh
not
my
like
gosh.
being near that little grave. You know, and people leave toys there, and
Do you think for
it's
like a
horrible.
baby's grave though, you just use like a kind of like a gardening tool? You don't even need a real
Oh,
shovel, right?
terrible. I hope not. I hope that I want them to use all the proper utensils. I want them to give that baby
I
the
know.
best burial.
I know.
You know, those guys, like
I
these
think
grave diggers.
if my baby ever died, I would just use my hands, man. I'd use my hands if it
Well,
was
that I
my
understand
baby.
because there's such a grief, and there's stories like in the Bible where the grief is so heavy, you're ripping your clothes off. You know, you're shredding your actual clothes. You know, so
Yeah.
ripping the
There's
ground open actually sounds, you know, like almost logistical in terms of that
well
utmost
to be
grief.
more accurate, if my baby died, I would dig my own grave and throw myself into it.
You know, and it's weird. I know. I hate thinking about it. And you brought up Stephen King earlier, and I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan these days, but I love his books. And something he said a long time ago sticks with me always. Obviously, he's known for writing fear and horror. And someone asked him, "What's the scariest thing you could ever think of?" And he said losing his kids. And
Wow.
it's the truth. It's the scariest thing to contemplate. And walking through the old graves, especially an old graveyard, like the last caller was going through a graveyard in the 1830s. So, you know, they had such much less medicine to deal with. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
unfortunately, a
a
lot
kid would
more.
get a toothache and die back then. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it
it was
was,
brutal times. Brutal times. So
yeah,
it was.
infant death was crazy.
Oh, it's terrible. But we're gonna go to another caller.
Yep, we're gonna go to another caller. We
Christopher,
got
don't go anywhere, and we'll play that game again if you can see what they said.
Eddie, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Okay, we
What's
can
up?
hear you. You can hear us. Very good. Okay.
Go for it, Eddie. How are you?
Oh, there we are. Okay, I had a couple of volumes going. Sorry, Shane.
Oh, cool.
Alex.
It's good to have you.
I'm excited to be on because you guys are, again, this week touching on things I've had all these feelings about and theories about my whole life. So I'm excited to talk about this stuff, especially Bradley. I met him in the chat, and he's a demon hunter. Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is that?
It's great. It's amazing. What a great chat room.
Yeah, for real. What's happening in there?
I love it.
So I don't know that I have well, I have some stories, but I think I don't have any special abilities. I have relatives, my mother, and even some close friends that kind of do. But I have always felt somewhat of a sensitivity to things, and it kind of all started for me. And and it's great that you had Christopher here because I'm gonna reiterate his point about the voice of God being music. Okay, because
Yep.
I truly believe in frequency and vibration. I was raised reading Tesla and all that stuff. And being a musician, when I got my first guitar, it was this little Les Paul knockoff, but I was in love with it. And I played it constantly. I would fall
Yeah.
asleep with it. In the summertime, 13, 14 hours a day, sweating in my bedroom. And what I noticed over time was that I could feel the electricity in the strings and in the pickups of the guitar. And it was tangible to me. It was in my hands, you know?
Yep.
So this kind of stuck with me over time.
Yep.
And then there were a few major events that kind of led me to where I am. I had lived in kind of a creepy house before, but nothing ever really happened until I was in the middle school. And we moved to a tenement house. I'm talking. My cat.
I was like, is that Alex on the soundboard, or is that cats in Eddie's
Wants
background?
attention. Yeah. That's Dolly. Hi, Dolly. Say hi to the world, Dolly. Here we go. So we had moved, and I think let me tell the story, and then I'll kind of point to my point, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
We have we'd moved into this tenement, and really, I had never experienced ghosts. I'd never seen ghosts. I was fascinated by the supernatural. I had read tons of ghost stories. I was always a bookworm, and supernatural stuff was always fascinating to me. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so distracted. Please stop. Please stop.
God damn those
But
cats.
nothing had ever happened to me. I never saw anything. I never saw a ghost. It was just fascinating. At family events, I would tell ghost stories to the kids with a flashlight and better. You know how it is.
Right.
But there was a point in my freshman year where in this new apartment, over time, like when I would go to bed at night, I could feel somebody touching my leg, like fingerprints and stroking my leg. And this would always happen when you're halfway falling asleep. And this was a time when television used to close out at night with a Star Spangled Banner, and then it would go to static like the Poltergeist movie. So, you know, you'd kind of wake up and you're seeing static, and you're feeling the blankets get pulled off of you.
Right.
It was just kind of weird stuff. I didn't put a lot of credence into it. It definitely creeped me out, but I'm kind of logical. I knew I was half asleep, and it was, you know, who knows what it could have been.
Right. Maybe your dreams are populating the real world.
Yeah.
Who knows? Right.
Yeah. Then what started to happen is over time I started to have night terrors. And the night terrors became quite profound. They affected me for the rest of my life. I had them well into almost till I was about 40 years old.
Wow.
And even later. Yeah, and it frightened the horror and the terror that I felt when I'm having these dreams is when it was weird, because I would be asleep and then all of a sudden, even in my sleep, everything would go real quiet. And then I would open my eyes, and I was between a dream state and a wake state. So I would see whatever was terrorizing me. And most of the time I couldn't see it. It was like a presence. It was like a wolf. It was like an evil. It was like something coming from the TV. So I couldn't move. I'm paralyzed. I'm stricken. And I'm trying to scream. You scream, and you can't get this voice out. You can't get it out. But me hearing my own voice is what always got me out of these night terrors. And you would see the dream disappear and fall away, and then I'm back into reality after being terrified. The night terrors could have been a variety of things. They could have been what I think might have been a past life experience. I had these dreams of myself on mountains with wolves for pets. I was a monk in one area. And then other times, I'm literally seeing phantoms and ghosts and faceless entities swirling around in my room. And just terror. It's just a terror. And you can see it.
Are there other people around you while you're sleeping that are watching you go through the night terrors?
Not yet, but it did happen. It
Right.
did happen. At this point, I'm 15 years old. I'm a
Okay.
kid at my mom's house.
Okay.
But they became so profound that I couldn't sleep anymore. It was the Freddy Krueger cliche. He's going to get you in your dreams. I was afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Over time, I became an insomniac, and that lasted, again, well into my 40s, my insomnia. It was a very real thing that I had to deal with. Eventually, what had happened was there was an event where in my bedroom, I was sitting on the edge of my bed looking out a bedroom window, and I was looking due north. And directly behind me on the opposite wall in my bedroom, on the interior wall, as I had this big, giant chest of drawers. It was actually my parents', but it couldn't fit in their room. It came into my room. It had these very distinct brass handles that jiggled. So when you lifted the handle to slide open the drawer, when you let go of the handle, it made a clanking sound against the wood and the brass fixture on the wood. Very distinct, I would recognize that sound anywhere. So there was an instance here where I'm sitting at the edge of the bed. I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and we're just having a conversation out the window. And subconsciously, I could hear the clanking of the handles in the background. Now, I thought about this later, of course. In the moment, it was definitely different. But now that I thought about it, I think in that time, it was just so familiar to me that it didn't register just yet. Hey, I'm here alone. Who's doing that? You know? And then the girl I was talking to said, hey, what's that noise? What's going on in your bedroom? And I'm thinking, oh, that's just my dresser. Like, I wasn't thinking, you know? Like, it was like, oh, it was just so common. And then as I turned around to face the dresser, the clanking became louder and louder. And it was just slam, 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 like so loud that it was violence happening there. And then I had a lamp. It was a lamp that I had on a bar stool in my corner of my room, and it came right at me, off the stool, in the air, toward me. Once it got to the point where the cord was still plugged into the wall, the cord kind of grabbed it at its last length, and it kind of fell. It never reached me. But maybe 3 feet in front of me, arm's length in front of me is where it stopped.
Wow.
And so I'm hearing audio, I'm seeing the handles on my dresser clank, and a lamp is coming at me. I jumped like an Olympian, like a gazelle, off my bed. I was to the door in one leap, like 8 feet.
Wow.
And I ran outside into my living room, screaming bloody murder. Now, this is broad daylight, guys. This is like 6 p.m. My whole family's home. It's not at night. There's no spooky things going on. There's no seance stuff. None of that stuff is happening. Mm-hmm. But that terror stuck with me forever. And then over time, I think I started to realize that somehow I was sensitive to, well, I call it energy. I know it's not energy. I just don't have the vocabulary for it. I don't know what it is. Right. But there's something going on that can physically manifest in our realm, in where we are. And sometimes it can show you things. And I think, just like Christopher was talking about earlier, like sometimes you just get into a place where you put your mind in a certain state because of an emotional state you're in, because of drugs you might have been on. I've had these experiences on drugs too, where I'm seeing phantoms. And I told my friends, maybe I'm so close to death because I did so much drugs that I'm seeing death approach. And they're like, no, you're opening yourself up to another realm. Yep. You're seeing something that we don't necessarily see. So my whole belief system after all these years, and I think it's let me bring the point home in this next story, and I'll bring it all home. Years later, about 15 years ago, I was renting a house in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, historically kind of ghosty over there. But I didn't think of it here nor there. Once I moved out of that house, I never had ghost issues really again. I could feel things. I'd been to graveyards. Lizzie Borden's grave is near my house. I can go there. You know what I mean? None of that stuff really happened. So at this new house, the night terrors came back. And then over a period of time, like I'm always fascinated in the occult because of all these things. I was raised Catholic and Christian. But because of all these things that happened to me, I had to know, how is the universe built? How does God talk to us? Does God talk to us? Where do ghosts come from? All those simple questions we ask. And then our whole life is just reading and research and all that, Absolutely. So I was spending time researching, again, Aleister Crowley. All right. You're familiar with this guy? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you are. Yep. So in some regard, I hold some credence to his work, but in other regard, at the end of the day, I don't. He's a junkie. He was a junkie, and you can't really hold a junkie accountable to the same standard that you could, like an Einstein. Right? There's a difference there, and I know that in my experience with these cultures, right? But at the end of the day, this man claimed that he could speak to other realms, and that there was a demon that he was in Congress with. I found on YouTube somebody was reciting some of his incantations and prayers. So this is what I was listening to in my little bedroom. I lived my bedroom. It was 2 master bedrooms on the second floor of this house. There was a stairwell that came up that divided the two. There was a cabinetry built into the wall that looked over the stairway. So there's a big opening in the stairway with a light fixture that I could see. Very ornate, very nice. I had my studio gear there. And over time, after a couple of days of really diving into Aleister Crowley, there was one night where I had my MacBook on and it was listening to these incantations and stories. I think it was an audiobook. You might have just been reading from the name escapes me now. The big one, the big book. Right. But
he's talking about taking the drugs and meeting the demon in like early April or something, and they communicate for 3 days.
Yep. And I remember there were some incantations that I was hearing, but at some point I kind of dozed off. And then I saw the light that's in the hallway. It turned on and it woke me up. It's because it was very bright. It was 12 feet away from me. It just illuminated my whole bedroom. kind of woke me up, and I thought I turned it on. So I got up, and I thought my roommate was there. So, hey, Jenny, are you home? Are you home? Nobody's home. It was quiet. I go back and sit back in my bed. I'm kind of up. I'm looking at my computer. And then I just sit back, laying in my bed. My computer's on my lap. And then all of a sudden, I could hear a rustling sound. And I look out into the opening that looks into that hallway. About 5 feet wide is this giant cloud slowly coming up the steps. It was smoky and dark, but it didn't have a wispy cloud shape.
Okay.
It was very geometric shaped. So it's these geometrical faceted object that's moving and organic. And I saw it slowly come up the stairs. And as this is happening, I'm freezing up. And then it comes into the hallway, and then I can see the tip of it, and it comes into the door and into the bedroom, and it's just coming right at me. And then I'm trying to lay back and get away from it. And then it comes above me, and I'm closing my eyes, and then I'll open my eyes, and in my arms is the body of a dead blonde girl.
What?
Had to be 7, 8 years old. Oh, a child. She had blonde hair. It was long. She was just wearing simple little clothes. It wasn't like any memorable dress. It just looked like an everyday little girl you might see playing in a yard, in your neighbor's yard.
Right.
And she was dead, Shane. Dead. I could feel the coldness of her body. I could see the purple of her lips and her skin. I could almost, like, it was such a weird smell that was happening in the room.
Right.
And I, again, just leapt up from, like, right straight up in the air, and she came away, and it went into the smoke. The smoke dissipated. Reality comes back. The lights are all on.
So was she lifted out of your arms, like, by the smoke, or did she become smoke? And did you smell the smoke when it was coming up the stairs, or did the smell happen when you were seeing this dead girl in your arms?
When I started to scream, because now, again, I'm in paralysis, so in order to get out of the paralysis, I have to scream. And it's like, you're trying to get a voice out and nothing comes out. And you force and finally the scream comes. And that's when all of a sudden, like, it didn't smell like smoke and it didn't smell like death or anything like that. I don't want to say it. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, like, ionic air purifiers that some people might have in their home. They kind of, it almost smells like one of those.
Interesting.
You know, like, it was just weird, but not so clean, a little foul to it.
Right. Like a tinge of something different in the air, but it's not like smoke itself. But yeah, because those filters can somewhat do, it's like when you turn on the air conditioner in your car sometimes. It's like a false air. Yeah.
Yep.
That's crazy.
As I leapt, as I got up, my eyes were kind of closed, but she was kind of like, my arms were going, and it was all dissolving, and there was one big action. So it's not like she fell out or the smoke pulled her. Like, she and the smoke all disappeared kind of at once. It just fades. It just goes away. It's almost as if it just gets sucked. It's almost like if you took a towel, took a piece of paper, or a board, right? You put a pinhole in the board and you poke the towel through that pinhole. So on one side, you can see the whole towel hanging on the pinhole, and the other side, you pull it out. You just pull it backwards, and it just disappears into the wood that way, right? It just goes away. And that was it for me. As much as that was the day that it all ended, to me, that proved that you can make talismans here. There will never be a Ouija board in my house. Nothing resembling a Ouija board will ever be anywhere I live. I keep no mirrors. There will never be a mirror. I keep one mirror in my bathroom to brush my teeth and comb my hair, right? That's it. But these objects, I am positive that, again, I'm using the term energy. I don't know if that's the right word. But these objects, if we focus our energy to them, stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to happen.
That's wild. Did you how did you learn to differentiate between your night terrors and reality?
Well, the terror, because the night terrors were terrifying. Most always, it would be a shape kind of appearing in my room. Like, it would be dark, and I'm kind of opening my eyes, and then I could see, like, a shape.
Right.
Like, almost like a blackness within the blackness.
Right.
And then I'm still asleep, but fear comes in. It's an overwhelming sense of fear. It's just
So yeah, it's like a wave of fear that, you know, when you feel that amount of fear, you're like, I'm stuck now. I'm in like a night terror. They're terrifying. I have my son, he doesn't really have much anymore, but when he was younger, had night terrors, and there's nothing scarier than seeing your child having a night terror.
Yeah.
You can be in the room with them. This is why I asked if anyone was in a room with you earlier.
Yeah.
You can be in the room, and it's different for everybody, but with our son, you could be in the room with them, and they're screaming bloody murder, and I'm saying my son's name. I'm holding him, and it's like my presence is on the edge of his nightmare, where I'm not there, right? Like I'm just like I'm a vapor at the edge of it, and whatever he's experiencing is the reality, even though his eyes are open. I'd never experienced those until you know, our son had them, and they're terrible. Yeah. Wow, Eddie, that's a wild story.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to bring home the point that Christopher was talking about earlier. Like, we're dealing with, I firmly believe we're dealing with frequencies that we just don't have an understanding of yet. I think now that I know more about science and physics and some of these things, that I think we could put a name on it. I don't know that it's truly terrifying anymore. I don't know that it's truly horrible anymore. I think I experienced, and maybe I have a sensitivity to these fields or electricity, if you will. And I think that needs to be explored. And I think, and I just want to throw this in too, Shane. If you haven't seen it yet, because this brings it home so much, because we have talked about Jesus on the show, and one of the things that Jesus has said, and Christopher brought up a statement about Jesus, which was great. But one of the things that Jesus and even Buddha have said is, don't be fooled by your eyes. This realm that we live in is not real. Materialism, this object that you covet, this money that you want, it's not real. It's meaningless. Yep. And Terrence Howard appeared on the Joe Rogan show yesterday, not to plug another show.
Yep. I want to watch that. Yeah.
It brings it all home. It's the unconscious, universal conscious theory, the light that is God, how our universe is made. He puts it made me understand what I had been through. Like, yes, here it is. Everything is alive. Everything is living. And I think sometimes our realm that we can experience here does indeed collide with these other electromagnetic forces and electricity in the air and all the other building blocks of our universe. And I think we're on the verge of a great awakening. I think old science is fading away. The physics of old is about to die. Darwinism is about to die. All of it's dying off. And this new great awakening is happening. And I think it's about the spiritual realm, the divine realm, as Terrence Howard stated it. So I highly encourage everybody to check it out.
I want to watch it, and I really appreciate this call. I love that you told us a terrifying story, and you're ending it with but you're ending it with this like optimism, which I appreciate. And I totally, I'm on board with you with like the energy, or however we want to talk about it, that allows us to communicate with, you know, whatever else is on the other side of this part of reality.
Life is simple. If you're going to make soup out of life, if you put shit in your soup, you're going to end up with shit soup.
That's
it.
That's true.
Don't make shit out of your life. Positive
I think
vibes only, be nice.
That's what they say that in the Constitution.
Okay.
Right? Yo, thanks, man. I appreciate the phone call.
Thanks for the invite, guys. Love the show. We'll talk to you soon.